All right, looks like we're live. So this is the Pipeline Podcast, episode 7. If you're here looking for our nightly coverage on the LA riots, we're only going to be briefly covering that today. This is our main show, so it's going to be a very long format on Twitch, maybe an hour, hour and a half. We'll see how long these topics take. You never really know, but we're not on a schedule, so it will take as long as it needs to take. If you want to see the LA riots coverage, check out our videos on YouTube. We're going to be trying to post there with LA riots updates every single night until the riots are over. In the meantime, we're also doing our weekly podcast episodes. That's what this is, episode 7. And we have some good stories tonight. And today is June 11th. Let's get started. Let's just really get into it. We're going to cover Tulsi Gabbard. So we have 4 sources on her. She's been in the news, I think, twice recently. And I haven't watched this, but people are like saying it's very interesting and maybe a little ominous or weird. So let's read her X post here. I recently visited Hiroshima and stood at the epicenter of a city scared by the unimaginable horror caused by a single nuclear bomb dropped in 1945. What I saw, the stories I heard, and the haunting sadness that remains will stay with me forever. It's just kind of like a PSA about like nukes and how they're bad. So I guess we're going to take a look. Maybe we'll try to find a conspiracy we can create out of it. Just follow along with me.
Dropped in 1945, 80 years ago. It's hard for me to find the words to express what I saw. The stories that I heard, the haunting sadness that still remains. This is an experience that will stay with me.
So far, this doesn't really look like a political video. It looks like she's trying to make a movie or something. Looks like a movie trailer, or for like an epic documentary or like miniseries or something.
Forever. This attack obliterated the city, killed over 300,000 people, many dying instantly while others died from severe burns, injuries, radiation sickness, and cancer that set in the following months and years. Nagasaki suffered the same fate. Homes, schools, families, all gone in a flash. The survivors, the hibakusha, they carried the pain of extreme burns, radiation sickness, and loss for decades. Survivors of this attack were asked to put in paintings and drawings their own memories and how they felt and what they saw, and those paintings and the suffering that they conveyed, the pain and the sense of loss were almost more powerful than the photos themselves. Yet this one bomb that caused so much destruction in Hiroshima was tiny compared to today's nuclear bombs. The bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima had a yield of just 15 kilotons of TNT, whereas today's nuclear warheads range in size from 100 kilotons to over 1 megaton. A single nuclear weapon today could kill millions in just minutes. Just one of these nuclear bombs would vaporize everything at its core. People, buildings, life itself. The shockwave.
So it is weird how like a government official is showing us dramatized videos of nukes hitting San Francisco.
Could kill millions.
I feel like that might be a little fear-mongering.
Just one of these nuclear bombs would vaporize everything at its core. People, buildings, life itself. The shockwave would crush structures miles away, killing and maiming countless people. And then comes the fallout. Radioactive poison spreading through the air, water, and soil, condemning survivors to agonizing deaths or lifelong suffering.
I have heard that the radiation kind of depends on the bomb. That might not be the case for everyone. We've never tested that, and let's hope we don't.
A nuclear winter could follow, with smoke and ash completely blocking the sun, plunging the world into darkness and cold, killing crops and starving billions. Acid rain would scar the earth, wiping out entire ecosystems. This isn't some made-up science fiction story. This is the reality of what's at stake, what we are facing now. Because as we stand here today, closer to the brink of nuclear annihilation than ever before.
Maybe this is like an anti-Iran type video. That's why she's doing this right now.
Political elite and warmongers are carelessly fomenting fear and tensions between nuclear powers.
She's kind of doing that right now.
Perhaps it's because they are confident that they will have access to nuclear shelters for themselves and for their families that regular people won't have access to. So it's up to us, the people, to speak up and demand an end to this madness. We must reject this path to nuclear war and work toward a world where no one has to live in fear of a nuclear holocaust.
Okay, so that's the video. She kind of talks at the end about like people are like warmongering and stuff about nukes because they have like bunkers they're going to go hide in, so they don't care. But I don't really think that's people that really do that. I don't think there's like super rich people that want to nuke the world because like what are they going to do? Just hang out in their bunker the rest of their lives? Either way, you know, this was a very interesting video. I think it's coming out now probably because of the tensions with Iran and they're trying to make some kind of Iran deal. I don't know much about that, but I know that they're still working on it.
I recently visited Hiroshima.
I'm sure we'll cover it when they make a deal, but not today. I just wanted to relate it back to this. I think that's why she's posting this. This is like a public service announcement for nuke. So we have more stories on Tulsi. Oh yeah, this is an article about the video we just watched. So Tulsi Gabbard warns of nuclear threat in social media video. Haven't read this article. We will check it out. So we got the title. She posted the video. The U.S. is closer to brink of nuclear annihilation than ever before, she said. She's the director of national intelligence, and she issued a stark warning about the threat of nuclear war, marking a sharp contrast with past comments made by Donald Trump on the same topic. Gabbard, who recently visited Hiroshima, reflected on the sadness. Is explaining the video here. It's like a summary of the video, but we've seen it. We don't need a summary. Her remarks were similar to previous remarks she's made on the campaign trail. However, the video was posted days after she traveled to the Shangri-La Dialogue, a major Asian conference held in Singapore earlier this month. Okay, so maybe it was some people in Singapore that like asked her to do this. That they're like, hey, this is kind of what we're really worried about right now. It would mean a lot to us if you like brought it to other people's attention. It could be not even related to like Iran. They're just talking about Trump here. They're just talking about other remarks that she's made. Pretty much a summary of this video and a little more backstory on Tulsi. We got another source here. This one might be related. That's why I kind of am bunching them together. U.S. Embassy in Middle East prepares to evacuate after warning from Iran. I wonder what country the embassy is in. We got to figure that out first. Oh, Baghdad. So I believe that's Iraq. Iraq U.S. Embassy prepares to evacuate after a warning from Iran. So Iran warned the U.S. Embassy of something, and the embassy is going to evacuate. So we need to figure out what this is about. Let's take a look. The embassy in Baghdad is preparing for an evacuation because of security threats in the region. The order is limited to non-essential personnel at the embassy. So it doesn't look like it's going to be completely evacuated, but it looks like most of the people, all the non-essential people. And then they've authorized voluntary departure to like everybody. So as long as you're not like a soldier, it looks like you can just leave if you want to. The State Department's decision to order the evacuation of all non-essential staff from the embassy in Iraq comes after an Iranian defense minister warns that Tehran would target U.S. bases in the area if hostilities spike or nuclear negotiations with Washington break down. Tehran, map of Tehran. Okay, so Tehran is in Iran, and so they're saying that this city in Iran is going to attack the embassy in Baghdad potentially if hostilities spike or nuclear negotiations with Washington break down. Okay, let's pull this up because I am not well versed in this. And this is just me trying to follow along with the article as best I can. So that's kind of what I get out of everything so far. Iran warned the embassy in Baghdad that Tehran is going to maybe attack Baghdad or other places if the Trump-Iran nuclear deal talks break down or if hostilities escalate. That's where we are right now. We're going to go deeper. Okay, so this guy, Nasser Zadeh, said that if a conflict is imposed on us, all U.S. bases are within our reach. So he's saying he might strike U.S. bases. President Trump has said he's less and less certain about the U.S. and Iran reaching a formal nuclear agreement. So it looks like the talks are like kind of on pause right now. So that's kind of where we're at. We'll see if that situation develops into anything. It is, I guess my hot take is it's weird that Iran is telling the U.S. that itself, the country of Iran, is going to attack the U.S. So you got like Iran, but then you have this like guy in Tehran. And it's like, all right, Iran, why don't you deal with that guy? Why are you telling us? So we'll go to we just have one more article on Tulsi Gabbard. Gabbard says AI is speeding up intel work, including the release of the JFK assassinations. Basically, it's her saying that she used AI to determine what Epstein files she should be released, because there's like a bunch of them apparently, and it just means she hasn't read through all of them, and the FBI still hasn't released any Epstein files, so it's just a little bit of an Epstein update. Basically, where we're at with Epstein right now is the FBI says they're going to release information on Epstein, but they haven't done it yet. They also claim that Jeffrey Epstein did unalive himself, and they can prove it with the evidence they're going to release that they haven't released yet. So that's kind of where we're at with Epstein. This is just a little thing that happened in the past with Epstein that just came out now. When Tulsi Gabbard released files on Epstein a little while ago, she used AI to decide which files to release, which just means she really hasn't gone through like everything. If she hasn't gone through it, how can you say that the public shouldn't know about it? And also quite possibly, like if you're using AI, I mean, what AI? Like, is that AI? Like AI does make mistakes. Also, it would be a lot easier to like suppress an article if she's running it through like a search filter first, just like Google hiding like certain results or something. That's interesting to see here. It just leads me to believe, I guess my hot take on it is there definitely is some juicy stuff that the public hasn't seen in the Epstein files. And this is kind of like more circumstantial evidence towards that could prove my point. And we'll definitely do an update on Epstein once the FBI releases these videos they claim that they have. And we've been waiting on that. It's kind of been a while. I would love to do another Epstein video. I'm really waiting on it, but it's just taking too long. Who knows when that's going to happen. Okay, cool. So we have our last story tonight. It is a Harvey Weinstein update. If you ever heard of like the Weinstein effect, it was kind of like that whole movement where a bunch of these guys, people just started actually saying something. And they're all like, hey, like he kind of like rapes people. And it all started with Weinstein. That's why it's called the Weinstein effect. But it kind of turns out, it's kind of been coming out over the last few years that maybe everybody got it wrong on him. And maybe he's not so guilty as everybody thinks, even if he is kind of a little guilty for like sexual assault. We'll just give a little breakdown and I'll just kind of chat about it. I do have two other sources here, but this is kind of like an overview of like all the events that have happened, at least all like the trials, with like a good timeline. So we got Weinstein was found not guilty on one count of criminal sexual act in the first degree on June 11th, 2025. So that was like his most recent trial. He was found guilty one count of criminal sexual act in the first degree. He was found not guilty for a criminal sexual act. And then there's another one that they're undecided on. I think it's the rape. So the jury is like hung that he actually raped this girl, which is interesting. And then this is a retrial from 2020 where they did find him guilty on these things. I'm pretty sure they found him guilty on all of them. But 5 years later, it kind of comes out that maybe he's not so guilty as you think. And everyone like politicized this. It made it look a lot worse than it was. And if you look into it, I'm not going to because it is a little bit gross. The kind of stuff that like him and like the other people, they like the girls he hangs out with, like they all do. Because it's not like he's the only guilty one here. Like some of these girls were like kind of into it. Some of them. But I don't really want to talk about that too much. I just want to point out that it's called the Weinstein effect for a reason. Because everyone kind of thought like he was like the perfect example, but it turns out it might have been just politicized. Maybe he didn't get a fair trial is also what it might be looking like. And these retrials are kind of proving that point because it looks like he's not so guilty as everybody thought. So we got the 2020 trial, which this retrial just overturned. He has another 2022 California retrial. So maybe in 2 years, it'll come out that he wasn't really guilty in California either. We'll have to see about that. And then he has like other verdicts. There's like a bunch of stuff. This is just a little breakdown. And then here's another article. He's convicted on one sex charge, acquitted on another, and I think the jury still hung up on the rape. So yeah, one guilty verdict and acquitted him on another after 6 days of deliberation, which is a long time. And they have not reached a verdict on the third count, which is third-degree rape. And from what I've kind of seen on this, it will probably be not guilty on this. Then we got one more source. Oh yes, 2020 rape conviction overturned. Here's what happens next. So what I think is going to happen next is his California one's going to get overturned as well. Oh, so this is really good stuff. So the 72-year-old had been serving a 23-year sentence in New York. So does he get out of prison or does he go to prison in California now? This is just talking about what I've said already. So yeah, but he also has 16 years in sex offenses he was convicted in LA. So he isn't getting released from prison. He's going to get transferred to California. So that makes sense to me. But I really think maybe there's special circumstances here where they should just do that California retrial right now just to make sure he actually should be going to prison before you waste all that time doing the transfer. Because it really looks like this case might have been misunderstood and blown out of proportion. And that's might be the only reason he's in jail right now. So I really think, especially after this conviction was just overturned, it's worth taking a look at quickly before he's transferred. That's kind of my take on it. Anyway, that's enough of Harvey Weinstein. Just wanted to talk about this because it does go deeper, but I'm not going to go deeper into it. But there are like emails between him and these people that are like claiming that making all the sexual assault claims. If you look into it, like some of the girls don't seem so much like a victim to me. But again, I haven't really looked into it. That's why I'm not going to talk about it. Also, there's some other weird stuff with Harvey Weinstein that's pretty juicy. Look into that if you want. Concludes episode 7. What we're going to do is we're just going to sum up all the stories we covered today, and that'll be the end of the episode. So our first story today, or the first thing we really covered, was just showing how much these LA riots have escalated. And we see a map here. This is where all the demonstrations are taking place now. It really just escalated because the California government wasn't even able to admit that there was riots in the LA. When you see all these criminals in your street and you don't say there's criminals in the street and you don't admit you have a problem, all the people that are in the street are going to just realize like, okay, this can happen anywhere. So other people are doing it too. And it's leading to just like civil unrest, not just in LA, but it could potentially lead to it across the country. And it kind of just ties into the whole King's Day narrative that the leftist like media is like playing into and spreading. And what they're really doing is just going to end up spreading violence. Like people are going to get injured. There might be more deaths. There's going to be a lot of like looting and damage to infrastructure. Every time the police come in and actually make arrests, they're just going to push the narrative that, oh, it's like government overreach. Look at them making arrests on these innocent protesters. So it's quite a terrible thing. And I almost think the Dems are doing it to make Gavin Newsom look good so they can have him run for president, especially after that California address he gave last night, which was just like it was just kind of weird. So I think that's like the long-term play here. They're prepared to let cities burn to the ground and people die just so that they can make Newsom look good and run him as the next president. That's if I had to make it into like a conspiracy, even though that wouldn't even really be a conspiracy, it would just be like their game plan. We'll see if that turns out to be true or not. And we will be following the LA riots every single night. So check it out. I've been posting them as Pipeline Podcast episode 6. I just made episode 6 it's just continuing. Every night it's going to have a little update on how the riots have escalated. We got Tulsi Gabbard telling everyone that nukes are bad. That's interesting, so we covered that. She also used AI to decide which Epstein files to release, which means she hasn't read them and doesn't really know which ones should be released. And in my opinion, it should just be all of them, but whatever. We have a U.S. embassy in Baghdad partially evacuating because of threats from Tehran, which is in Iran, that they might attack. They might attack U.S. bases. And then we have Harvey Weinstein 2020 rape conviction overturned. So it looks like he's going to get transferred to a prison in California to finish out his California conviction. My hot take here is you should hurry up with this California retrial and see if he should be in jail in the first place, because it's very likely that this case was politicized. He maybe shouldn't be in jail in the first place. So we'll see how that finishes. We'll update it when we have more news. We might not get any news. Who knows? That was just like a real thing that happened, which is crazy to me, just because of like the whole Weinstein effects like narrative that people have heard of. And I don't want to get into like the politics of that too much. But either way, it looks like he got caught up in it. Even if he's kind of a weird guy, that doesn't mean he should be in jail. We'll see how that ends up going. Check us out every Wednesday for the long form streams and videos if you like that kind of thing. If you don't, the YouTube also, we're going to be posting like short form videos. They're going to be just like focusing on like a brief amount of topics, or they're just going to be focusing on like one topic for like 10 to 30 minutes. Who knows? Depends on what there is to talk about. Right now we're covering the LA riots, so check that out and have a great Wednesday.